Yes, the U.S. has a lot going on right now, but here in Nigeria, in the sub-region, there is equally a lot to talk about. So we're focusing on security right now. The springing up of sects here and there, some say no, they're not new. They've been here before. But the obvious dangerous trend is what we're talking about. We've seen recent resurgence of attacks in Borno State. And you're wondering, I thought we had at least gotten a handle on insecurity in the country. There's also talk about government spending towards insecurity, accounting for those funds. Who is funding insecurity in Nigeria, particularly the terrorism we've seen in the north and the banditry? We're joined on the program this morning by two gentlemen. Former Director, DSS Security Consultant, Mr. Mike Ejiofor, joins us from our studio in Abuja. And we have Dr. Williams Park, former Assistant Controller General of Immigration, also Security Consultant, joining us via Zoom from Port Harcourt. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the morning brief. I think naturally we'll begin with the security implication, and I'm talking global security implication of President Trump's second coming, as it has been described now. And I'll begin with you, Mr. Ejiofor, because a lot of people see Trump and they see unpredictability. Some see him and they see, well, a no-nonsense person. Some see him and they see, well, we're not sure if America will play that big brother role in the world when it comes to security and all of that. But Mr. Ejiofor, as a security consultant, what do you see?
Well, I've never been a fan of Donald Trump. And during the inauguration yesterday, I wasn't expecting anything less than what he did. Instead of inaugural speech, so to speak, what we witnessed was maybe a state of the nation rolling out policies that will be implemented immediately. How he intends to implement this, I don't understand. But again, the security implications, because he's not somebody that is predictable. You don't know what his policies are in Africa or particularly in Nigeria. Today is pretty like a friend, tomorrow is an enemy. Some of the hard decisions he reeled out yesterday, I hope it doesn't create major security challenges in the world.
Let me go to Dr. Park, and this is how I want Dr. Park to respond to this. Because of your immigration background, let me reel out some of the immigration decisions, immigration and border decisions that Donald Trump issued. One, bar asylum for people newly arriving at the southern border, moving to end birthright citizenship, although this is of course guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. Is also suspending the refugee admissions program, declaring migrant crossing across the US-Mexico border to be a national emergency. So obviously funding for the border wall is going to be unlocked unilaterally. There's also resuming a policy that requires people seeking asylum to wait in Mexico while an immigration judge decides. And finally, designating cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. From your experience, again, you can speak to the Nigerian experience. What do you see this achieving? Are these things possible, or is just the usual rhetoric?
Well, it was part of his campaign that America for Americans, but he's not new on the job. He's been a former president, so he knows that his country has quite very high institutions that at least would like to cut down his excesses. But I don't think there's anything wrong with any country protecting their borders, especially if they feel that the infiltration of migrants, especially the irregular ones, would indeed be inimical to the economy or political interest or economic interest. I don't see that he has done anything wrong. But you see, the American country, as we know them, have been quite open, and has been a place where people go and kind of equally share in the American dream. I think that while curtailing the very irregular migration, America has benefited from, migration, because a lot of the people that are there now have been contributing to the economic development of that country in every material particular. He shouldn't be too hard on the world, but then, of course, he has to protect his country within the limits of their laws.
All right, Mr.
That's my
Jofo.
take on that.
Okay, Mr. Jofo, let's come back home to how we're managing our affairs. We know that for some time we recorded a bit of success. For instance, what I mean in terms of the frequency of attacks and fatality, those numbers as reported kind of came down, or incidents came down, but we now saw the resurgence of Lakarawa. We hear another one is springing up again. In your view, from an intelligence perspective, what is the failure that were recorded and is leading to this resurgence of, all kinds of groups now showing themselves and wreaking havoc in parts of the north, especially?
Saying that there's no confirmed resurgence for now of a new group, ACAD. But if you recall that when the alarm was raised on the issue of Lukarawa, yeah, it's been in existence since 2017, but government has been putting measures to check their activities. What we have witnessed, from the secular intelligence obtained, I say intelligence now, obtained by the Nigerian Immigration Service, that was an internal administrative circular, asking their commands and various formations to confirm the existence of this. And that becomes a problem. Mishandling of documents, something that was meant for internal consumption, came to the public, and I think the management of the Nigerian Immigration Service should look into it, because it was not meant for public consumption. Granted, without considering that such a thing exists, I think the Nigerian Immigration Service would have liaised with, and I'm sure they must have done that, liaised with the State Security Service, which is charged with such functions, to establish the existence of this new group. And the information on the group is hazy. You see, they are not recruiting Christians, they are not recruiting Muslims, they are recruiting their form of human trafficking. They are talking about African religion. So the information is sketchy, needs to be properly investigated and confirmed before we take any decision on the emergence or existence of such a group.
Mr. Park, okay, let me say with you, Mr. Ejiofor, before I go to Mr. Park. One of the things that crossed my mind, Mr. Park, I'm going to come to you in a moment, and this has to do with when we raise the issue of whether it's a new group or an old group or the ones we're familiar with, and the resurgence, for instance, the Lakarawa issue, resurgence here, I'm referencing it contextually to the issue of more attacks, and the military has been doing their bit to take them out, although we also have recorded collateral damages, which is another conversation in its entirety. We're going to speak to that. The issue around ungovernable spaces, I would like you to help us, Mr. Ejiofor. How do we navigate ungovernable spaces? Because those are the spaces that are prone or vulnerable to some of these attacks. And when we raise the issue with security agencies, the issue of ungovernable spaces, what do we do with ungovernable spaces, Mr. Ejiofor, if you will?
Yeah, well, you see, I've discussed this issue of ungoverned spaces. First of all, before you talk of ungoverned spaces, what is the presence of government in that area? Most areas we talk of ungoverned spaces. You take, for instance, are the local government administration existing in that area? In this large expanse of land we call ungoverned spaces, you see that some of the local governments, the chairmen operate from the state capitals. They don't get to the areas of administration thereby depriving the people of, and if the security, if they are not there, security will also not be available. So the issue of ungoverned species must start from local administration before the security agencies are drafted in.
All right, Mr. Park, I think I'll also raise that question with you as well on this issue of ungoverned spaces, especially given your background in immigration. We have all of this porous border all over the place that seem to be a bit of a challenge. I think I remember one of the former chief of army staff also mentioned he put the record straight because people were throwing a lot of numbers, but he now put the accurate record as to what it is. So maybe you can remind us of how many borders we have and what cultural impacts, what in terms of culture is affecting the ability to be able to close our borders effectively and govern Nigeria more efficiently, because culture is also important. I say that to say about the issue of Niger Republic and some parts of the north, like places like Kaduna and Jigawa.
Well, thank you very much. Like my friend Mike had pointed out, if you don't have the presence of government or governance in a particular place, you find people occupying them. But the issue is from our history. When the countries were created, they were just created arbitrarily, and separating people that have similar cultures. In our service, we have what we call approved border. An approved border is where you can come and have the immigration, the custom, the planned quarantine, and all such people, and do their job. But of course, we have this stretch of land and landmass that we don't have approved borders, and people, especially irregular migrants, seem to follow those areas into our country. And you can't rule out the fact too that criminals can equally go through those areas. In trying to improve the management of our border management, I think the government is doing much, especially now with trying to have digital security where to cover those areas where you could not have human beings stretching all through the borders, so that we can have information of what is happening outside the approved borders, and then of course from a strategic base, we could always provide policing in such areas. But there's no doubt about it that we have a lot of landmass border that is quite not protected. It is expensive to do so, but it is not undoable. I believe that government should, go into digital security to cover such areas for the, benefit of the citizens and the security of the country.
Well, at this point, there's still lots of concern about the budget for security at the National Assembly. They talk about it being inadequate, and some say, can we even account for the previous budget and the spendings of security agencies? But yes, it was immigration that raised the alarm about this so-called new sect that it operates in Kaduna. The head is in Plateau, and all of that. They are involved in human trafficking and the rest. And I drew some sort of inference from Donald Trump and his, building the wall strategy. A lot of people thought it was outrageous at first, but it looks like a lot of people are now catching up to that idea. So specifically speaking now, if we were to say, well, we've identified that, or at least we know that this porous border is really responsible largely for insecurity, particularly for the northern states that share borders with countries up north. Do you think we'll have the political will and, more importantly, the kind of responsibility in transparency and accountability in using funds to achieve security, whatever infrastructure we choose to at that side of the border?
My suggestion would be that whatever amount that is provided in the budget for defense, or for immigration, or for the army, there should be effective oversight function by the legislature. If you give people money to spend on a particular project, then it follows that those who have oversight function should make sure that it is spent and it is spent properly. If that is done, it will cut down some of the issues in terms of not having enough equipments to fight this cross-border irregular migration and cross-border criminality. Again, I believe that there has to be some strategic alliance with our neighbors, those countries that we have um, borders with. There was something like that with Niger, what they call the joint uh, force, comprising of both Niger and Nigerian security forces. And while they were there, it was quite, they were able to contain to a large extent, I believe, the cross-border crimes, including the new sects you're talking about, both in Sokoto and otherwise. I think that effort should be made to have this good relationship with our borders, be it Niger, be it those in Benin Republic or in Cameroon, and we should have good relationship with our neighbors. If you do, then we can cooperate in terms of intelligence gathering, and of course, every effort to indeed contain cross-border crimes, which will affect both countries, affect the region, and affect everybody.
Well, Mr. Jofo, let me come to you now. Thank you, Dr. Park. And it's on the same conversation around spending, right? I've never heard that we've budgeted enough for fighting insecurity in the country. It's never enough, and that's on the one hand. But some other people say that's a lot of money to begin with. Security gets a huge chunk of our budget, even more than some sectors that people think may be even more important to the growth of our nation. Again, that's a debate. So why is it that security spending, or at least the budgetary process, has always been, would I say, less transparent? Really, because you can always tell that every year there'll be the question, what did you use the money for? Before you say it's not enough, what did you use this money for? How did these monies go? We see our soldiers, as people say that they don't have enough manpower, that the terrorists come with superior firepower. So why do we keep having that issue with security spending?
Well, we have such problems because we have a lot of security challenges confronting the country. And I'm even surprised. I've always accused the National Assembly of improper oversight, of their functions. But it gladdened my heart yesterday when I saw that the chairman of the House Committee on Security and Intelligence was now raising the issue that the budget was not enough. How much was given to the security and intelligence? Which is $595 billion. Out of this, you have about 270 something billion for overhead, and you have 117 for recurrent, that's salary, and operational costs. That is grossly inadequate. And since the issue was raised, because of numerous security challenges, plethora of security challenges confronting the country, I think we need to up the budget because, like it's always said, if literacy is expensive, why don't you try literacy? Now, the proper thing to do, because the fulcrum of all meaningful development of all the budget we have is security. If we don't have a security environment within which to operate, all the budget we are doing is just hopeless. So we must prioritize the issue of security, and that is why people say that in the issue of budgeting, it can never be enough in terms of security. Because we are talking of salaries, we're talking of welfare, you are talking of training of staff, you are talking of acquiring equipment. This is cost money. And some of them you can't easily get them off the shelf. You budget for this year, possibly next year, you have not gotten such equipment, especially with the military. Now, if you look at the budget release, that becomes another problem. It's a different thing to budget and another thing to get the release. What performance are we having in terms of budget? We are still operating 2023, 2024, 2025 budgets because they are not fully implemented. Some of them are 25%, 40% performance. So you don't say that the budget, the money is there. The most important is that if you budget, you must release. And again, I've always said it, like the National Assembly, if you begin to play in terms of oversight, you shouldn't be within the security subsector because they look for what do they call it? This project. So they ask you to bring project to do for them, and this money is not sufficient, and yet people are still asking for more money. So it's a problem. It would never be enough.
Okay, Mr. Park, let's take it to Mr. Park. I know that the president was at a African high-level meeting on counterterrorism in Abuja sometime in April last year, and I want to read what he said because I want to look at the regional implication of perhaps dropping the ball and not facing these things headlong. He said, look at the illegal mining that plagues so many of our nations today. Those who think illegal mining has no connection with financing terrorism are sorely mistaken. The international community has both moral and legal obligation to help this cause because it's external finance, not African money, that fuels illegal operations. We've always talked about the fact that there's a suspicion that there are external financiers of terrorism, and we seem not to be able to put our hands on it. I would like you to speak to that element. Is it a question of diplomacy, or we're not just brutally honest in addressing the issue of foreign financing or terrorism, because that is one of the biggest challenges we have besides the boots on the ground?
However you look at it, whether it's illegal mining, it's organized crime, transnational crime. Whether it's illegal bunkering, whether it's poaching of endangered species in terms of animals, these are organized crimes. And so you can't rule it out. So it's important that, like I mentioned, you have corporations and good relationship with your neighbors. It will curb that. It's equally important that we have security agencies in our border communities and make the border communities a place that people can come and live, not a deserted area. Once people do not find amenities, the welfare of the people at the border communities are not taken care of, then you find criminals, be they terrorists, bandits, take over such spaces that you now call ungoverned spaces and begin to implement their own rules and laws, begin to extort money from those people, begin to manipulate them and indoctrinate them. Right. So they're all connected. There is international connection because it is transnational organized crime. Anyhow you want to look about it. We don't refine most of the things they mine in Nigeria. No. Most of the oil that are stolen illegally are not refined in Nigeria. Most of the games that are pushed are sold abroad. In terms of human trafficking, it equally involves organ harvesting. And these are sold at higher prices in other climes where the currencies are a little bit stronger than ours.
Right.
And so you find people trying to make money out of these things. And so there's international connection.
Well, Dr. Park, certainly these things do not happen in isolation, but we've heard how we have some of the finest men and women in our security agencies. We even have agencies for tracing these monies. So I expect that the expectations of Nigerians will not be at least shattered in this new year. But we'll have to thank you so much, Dr. Williams Park, former Assistant Control General of Immigration Security Consultant, as well as Mr. Mike Ejiofor, former Director at DSS. Thank you once again for your time on the show.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick break now, and when we return, artificial intelligence takes the center stage. How do we ensure that we're able to leverage technology to fight corruption while people who are engaged in corruption are using technology as well? Stay with us. We'll be right back.